Beijing pushes a VEU rare earth regime, a fake cooperation that's really a trap. Outwardly it plays institutional games, inwardly it rules by intimidation. Trump warns that China must prove it is trustworthy. The EU prepares legislation to remove Huawei and ZTE. Taiwan's Vice President Xiao Baikim's speech in Europe draws thunderous applause, and the Fujian carrier turns into a CCP propaganda show. This is a comprehensive showdown, from rare earths to values. Don't miss the next drop. Subscribe and hit the bell. This time Beijing rolled out a new trick. The Wall Street Journal revealed that Beijing is preparing to launch a new scheme called VEU. On the surface, it fulfills a promise to Trump by restoring normal rare earth exports. In reality, it's a trade smuggling move that uses rules to play dirty. On one hand, it tells the US we're willing to cooperate, while quietly designing thresholds that let rare earths slip around the military ban. It shouts peace and prosperity, yet at the same time seeks to use Interpol to put Taiwan legislator Shen Piong on a global wanted list. Trump blasted back. The CCP must first prove it is trustworthy. Xi Jinping's answer, however, is, I will play by rules, just not yours. Behind this clash of systems, the EU has begun to comprehensively remove Huawei and ZTE, while Taiwan's Vice President Xiao Baikim took the stage at the European Parliament and more than 50 lawmakers rose to their feet in applause. In that moment, the world saw the truth. While Beijing demands respect with its fists, Taiwan wins dignity with conviction. In this episode, we'll unpack what calculations hide inside Xi's VEU trap. Why does the CCP court the United States while threatening Taiwan? And why is even Europe now saying no to Huawei and to Beijing? The VEU scheme, Xi's two-faced promise. On November 11th, the Wall Street Journal reported that Beijing is considering introducing a validated end-user VEU regime. It would allow Xi to honor promises made to Trump by facilitating exports of rare earth materials, while ensuring they don't flow to U.S. defense contractors. The VEU regime could make it harder for dual-use car and aerospace companies to import certain Chinese materials. Sources say Beijing could still change course. Details of the licensing scheme remain unclear before implementation. Rare earth magnets and other controlled materials are widely used in civilian products like EVs and airliners, but fighter jets, submarines, and attack drones also require them. As to which companies would qualify for blanket licenses and what benefits such licenses would confer, Beijing has not specified. Nor is it clear how long a Chinese version of VEU would remain in force. Under the U.S. system, Chinese companies approved to procure via VEU have sometimes had their eligibility revoked, a practice that has worried Beijing. Therefore, even if some firms could benefit from Beijing's VEU arrangement, many may still decide to seek alternative sources for controlled products. In recent months, U.S. and European companies have complained that access to rare earth magnets has tightened. Although Beijing has sporadically agreed to relax restrictions on magnets, China's rare earth magnet exports to the U.S. in September fell 29% month-over-month, indicating that in the weeks leading up to the ceasefire, restrictions continued to affect many companies. Once Beijing implements VEU, it injects new uncertainty into the U.S. China trade truce and further fragilizes relations. U.S. Treasury's Besant has already warned that if Beijing fails to honor its rare earth commitments, Washington can raise tariffs at any time. Beijing's version of VEU appears designed to avoid accusations of noncompliance, extremely sly and devious. For Trump, what's needed is fairness. Beijing's VEU seems tailor-made to exploit that opening. After Trump and Xi met in Busan, South Korea, Trump posted on social media that for U.S. China relations to get back on track, there must be fair trade, not wishful thinking. The CCP must prove it is trustworthy. The CCP bullies the weak and fears the strong. Daring to play the VEU game with the U.S. is Beijing's delusion that it can look America in the eye, standing on equal footing. That is not fairness. It's a gambit born of comparing fists with the U.S. Facing outward, it meets America's gaze. Inward, it menaces Taiwan. Toward Taiwan, whose fist Beijing deems smaller, the CCP behaves recklessly. On November 9th, state broadcaster CCTV released a video blustering that, via Interpol and other channels, it could launch a global arrest operation and cross-border judicial cooperation targeting DPP legislator Shen Piong of Taiwan. Beijing labels Shen a stubborn Taiwan independence element. At the end of October, the Chongqing Public Security Bureau claimed it had opened a case against Shen. In a November 10th interview, Shen said the video served two purposes. First, Beijing's domestic economy is unstable and public grievances are boiling. The CCP wants to divert attention. This is internal propaganda. Second, Vice President Xiao Baikim and former President Tsai Ing-wen's foreign visits have drawn positive international responses. Beijing is fearful and seeks to shift the global focus. Shen stressed he is not worried about traveling abroad. The CCP's main goal is to create psychological terror, so political and military figures will shy away from parliamentary diplomacy. He won't be cowed. He'll carry on as usual unaffected. The DPP issued its strongest condemnation, calling this the greatest threat to cross-strait relations, regional peace, and the personal safety of the Taiwanese people. The CCP's authoritarian mindset and brute methods have become deranged and bottomless. On November 10, Presidential Office spokesperson Karen Kuo addressed the Taiwanese people. Beijing has no jurisdiction over Taiwan. The government will ensure every citizen's personal freedom and will also punish anyone who assists such illegal behavior. On November 11, President Lai Ching-te stated clearly that Beijing has no jurisdiction over Taiwan. The DPP's China Affairs Department also said on November 11 that Beijing's claim to globally arrest Xin is one form of its internationally notorious transnational repression. CCTV's video even threatens that you could be next. Xiao Baikim's speech in Europe, a historic breakthrough. On November 7, Vice President Xiao Baikim traveled to Europe to speak at the annual summit of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, IPAC. When she finished, more than 50 MPs erupted in applause, rising for a standing ovation and clamoring for photos, like a whirlwind brought by a surprise guest. This was Taiwan's first participation as a member state of IPAC this year. DPP legislator Fan Yun, invited as Taiwan's co-chair, said it was witnessing a historic moment. Foreign Minister Lin Chialung told Yahoo's online program, Chiu Li, that Beijing had been probing the event 10 days in advance, so the team had to ensure Xiao arrived just before the speech. Neither too early to tip off the trip nor too late to miss it. It involved not only Belgium but also the UK mission, the European External Action Service, and transit points, many variables. The MOFA had to make sure every gate was green-lit, with a video backup plan. Lin noted that multiple Taiwanese delegations happened to be visiting Europe, and Beijing had been inquiring 10 days earlier, but it didn't know the details, who was taking what route and which group to interfere with. On November 10, Taiwan's Central News Agency reported that Professor Stefano Pelaghi of Sapienza University of Rome judged Xiao's address at the IPAC annual meeting as absolutely memorable, symbolizing shared values between Taiwan and Europe at a time when Taiwan most needs international support. Sapienza's political science department held a seminar on November 10 titled Reimagining Taiwan: Conflicts, Connections, and Identity. Speakers included Pelaghi, NTU China Studies Center senior researcher Ian Li Chao, Academia Sinica associate researcher Li Yutang, and University of Portsmouth scholar Isabel Cockle. Ian, Harvard government PhD and LSE Masters, argued that Xiao's speech is a major diplomatic breakthrough. IPAC has real influence and Taiwan-Europe ties have been warming in recent years. He added that many European countries have traditionally been more cautious on Taiwan, relying heavily on the Chinese market. It's extremely rare for Taiwan to break through in this environment. In short, Xiao's speech opened a new era, prompting the West to reassess Taiwan's values. It marks the beginning of a clean break between Western civilization and the CCP. EU countermeasures. Comprehensively removing Huawei and ZTE. History shows that Beijing reneges on promises and fails to deliver. It is not to be trusted. Hence, the EU's move to study how to remove Huawei and ZTE from telecom networks is the right step. On November 10, Bloomberg reported that the European Commission is studying legal avenues to push member states to phase out Huawei and ZTE equipment over the coming years and exclude them from mobile networks. Commission Vice President Henna Virkkunen is reportedly considering turning prior recommendations to halt high-risk vendors into binding law, a recommendation first issued in 2020. Once such recommendations gain legal force, non-compliant member states could face infringement procedures and financial penalties. Western countries have long recognized potential security risks from Huawei and ZTE. Last year, the EU urged members to reduce use of high-risk vendors and to limit their involvement in 5G. Sweden, Denmark, Estonia, and others have moved to exclude Huawei and ZTE. Commission spokesperson Thomas Renier said, "The security of 5G networks is crucial to our economy." Some EU states, however, have not fully implemented restrictions due to cost and security assessments. If the Commission pushes a mandatory phase-out, telecom policy could become more unified across the bloc. With EU-China trade and political relations growing tenser, concerns over Chinese telecom suppliers are rising. Critical national infrastructure cannot be secure if products from companies closely tied to Beijing are embedded. Member state security would be compromised. At the same time, the Commission is considering measures to pressure non-EU countries not to rely on Chinese telecom vendors, including halting payments under the Global Gateway initiative to countries that procure Huawei equipment. Global Gateway is a €300 billion EU strategy, 2021 to 2027, to invest in global infrastructure, offering developing countries an alternative to Beijing's Belt and Road through projects in green and digital transitions, healthcare, education, and transport. The carrier Fujian, Beijing's florid show of fists. Beijing meets America's gaze with a bigger fist and bullies Taiwan with a smaller one, revealing it runs counter to the tide of history and is being cast off by the West. And are its fists truly hard, or just for show? Is the Fujian, the PRC's third carrier, really a new symbol of national might? On November 11th, Taiwan's Up Media reported that Fujian features electromagnetic catapults and a straight deck. PRC defense officials and state media have hyped it to the skies. A milestone, a true blue water capability. Indeed, the Fujian can carry J-35 stealth fighters and KJ-600AW aircraft, far surpassing the ski-jump Liaoning and Shandong. Even in a pared-down commissioning ceremony, Xi Jinping still basked in sycophantic cheers. Follow the party's command, fight to win, maintain excellent conduct. Before commissioning, the plan had already conducted launches and recoveries on the Fujian of the new generation J-35, the KJ-600, and improved J-15s. Regional military observers and analysts say they will watch Fujian's next deployments closely. Carrier ops tempo, air wing launches and recoveries, fleet coordination, and submarine support, to assess how fast it reaches full combat readiness. Ben Lewis, founder of the open-source platform PLAtracker, believes Fujian needs at least another year to reach FOC. Since May 2024 it has completed 9 sea trials, but the ship is a new design almost from top to bottom. Singapore defense scholar Colin Coe notes that footage shows J-15 catapult takeoffs without weapons loads, suggesting an early testing phase. He adds the KJ-600's presence is significant, improving the plan's carrier C-2 and extending its maritime strike radius. Since the Liaoning's commissioning in 2012, the plan has been relatively cautious, using carriers mainly as test and training platforms. Only in recent years has it sailed east of Japan and toward Guam, a major U.S. base. Observers expect the Fujian and subsequent carriers to undertake more ambitious blue water operations. Because the Fujian uses conventional diesel power, its endurance lags U.S. nuclear carriers, which can operate for years without refueling and conduct global blue water missions. Some analysts estimate Fujian must replenish or pull into port roughly every 10,000 nautical miles, about 18,500 kilometers. The Pentagon's China Military Power Report last December noted that the Fujian and future sister ships will enhance PRC power projection, able to carry specialized EW and ASW aircraft, and boosting carrier strike group attack capacity beyond the first island chain. Coe believes the Fujian will surely become a symbol for domestic propaganda and may conduct drills near Taiwan, though its actual role in a Taiwan conflict is debatable. Carriers are generally meant for the open ocean. Entering a relatively narrow strait risks exposing vulnerabilities and falling within enemy anti-ship missile range. For Beijing, in any case, the Fujian is a potential game changer. But many capabilities still need testing and honing, including how to maximize its role in a Taiwan contingency. Beijing's planned VEU rare earth regime results from exploiting Trump's fairness doctrine and from comparing fists with the U.S. It empties equality of substance and projects a hegemonic bullying mindset. Precisely because the CCP's values clash with those of the West and the United States, it is becoming an object of global rejection, destined for history's dustbin. In this process, Vice President Xiao Baikim's successful IPAC address, overcoming Beijing's obstruction, marks a historic moment, proving that fists are not justice or truth, becoming one historical memory on the CCP's road to decline.